everyone, Alexa Donne here, and today I am going to be doing a little bit of an update on do I read my reviews? On the topic of authors and their reviews, update. A lot of what I feel and best practices and my advice to you has not changed, and I will repeat some of that, but also the last time I really talked about this in a video, I don't think my book was out yet, my debut novel, and now I've had 2 books come out. I have a 3rd one coming out in May, and the relationship that authors have with their reviews, it's messy. It evolves. It can evolve. And you can start out one way with, oh, this is how I am about reviews, and you can definitely change your mind because in practice, it can be so much worse than you realize it is. And the topic of authors and interacting with reviews is the topic du jour. Again, cyclical, it always comes up, but it happens to be coming up now on YouTube. And to that end, I do want to give a small plug. If you think this topic is interesting, A, stick around, but B, join me on Books Like Whoa, Mara's channel on Tuesday at 6 p.m. PT. I am going to do a live stream with her talking about this topic, me as an author who is also a book reviewer, and Mara as a talented and wonderful book reviewer, member of the book community, and kind of how sharp-edged the whole topic is. I know we're gonna have a great discussion because she's great and her viewership is great. But to that end, this topic has come up in a couple places, and I've heard people who watch my channel like comment, oh, Alexa reads all of her reviews. And it's like, well, do I? So that's what I wanted to cover, because the update is I don't actually read all my reviews anymore. I still read my reviews, but what I discovered, it was the process I went through on my debut, Brightly Burning, and it repeated itself on The Stars We Steal, and I'm just gonna assume it's gonna repeat itself on the Ivy. So the revision there is, I read up until like a week or 2 after the book comes out, maybe a month. We'll see how far I get, because there's basically, for me, someone who generally can handle reviews, like I can handle negative reviews of my work, and I'm going to talk about best practices and coping mechanisms in a little bit, but I reach like an emotional tipping point, and some people reach it sooner, which is why for some people they shouldn't read reviews at all, but I have found repeatedly that I can only hear the same thing so many times, good or bad. And obviously good is gonna give you a little adrenaline rush, but it's not good to only read like high praise of yourself. Frankly, you kind of need to balance that with everything else. But you can only hear criticism so many times, especially, if someone's just like beating the dead horse, it's out of your control. The book is out, you can't change it. And so on each book, there's just come a point where I've essentially read several hundred reviews, because I can't resist early arc reviews. I am incapable of that. And I like to get a general sense of, I call it taking the temperature of how a book is landing. And I do actually think that is useful to an author. We read our trades. I still read my trade reviews, of course I do. My editor sends them to me. And I do believe there's some authors who ask not to be sent their trade reviews and they don't read them, but I, knock on wood, am not yet at a point where that's a problem. I haven't been dragged by a trade. I've definitely had a trade say some salty things that I didn't agree with. Don't respond to your reviews. Isn't that the point? But that's the thing. Like, I like to take the temperature and kind of process how a book is landing, and then I'm able to move on. I'm able to go, okay, and generally I move on from my books once they're out. And that's a pretty natural thing. Because you should be moving forward to the next book. But that's just like my little revision there. If you post a review of Brightly Burning or The Stars We Steal tomorrow, I'm not gonna see it. Unless you tag me in the review in Instagram, which is kind of a side topic. So the only exception to reading reviews of those previously published books is Instagram, because people tag me in reviews on Instagram. Now, again, knock on wood, by and large, they are positive reviews, but I have been tagged in negative reviews on Instagram with very pretty pictures, by the way. And I have a lot of thoughts about what I as an author, or how we as authors, like kind of our pro tips and best practices for reviewers, which is a whole other topic that I'm probably gonna make a separate video about. Just kind of like a, hey, readers, reviewers, let's sit down, let's talk. Don't tag authors in negative reviews, period, but especially on Instagram. It's just like, oh God, the emotional experience of seeing a beautiful picture and then expanding it because you were tagged, I'd like to mention, not seeking it out. If an author seeks out a review and sees something they don't like, that is their fault. But when you tag me in it, I'm gonna look. And then it's like, oh, okay. It's, oh gosh, I have so many feelings about that, but we are gonna save that. So that is the one exception, that I have seen the occasional review that I've been tagged in on Instagram. And I do try, in terms of author-reader interaction, if I am directly tagged in something, to just give a nice little like. It's a nice way to acknowledge, thank you so much for reviewing it. But I haven't touched my Goodreads pages for those earlier books in a long time, because I don't need that. So currently I am reading Ivy's reviews, but I know that's gonna stop eventually. But again, knock on wood, so far early critical reception, y'all seem to like it, which is such a relief. That's the thing about taking the temperature. I like to see whether or not what I hoped for and intended landed with the readership. And sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. Though, let's talk about authorial intent. And if a reader doesn't get out of your book what you wanted them to, or they get something out of your book that is the opposite of what you intended, it doesn't matter. Because here's the thing, inevitably, someone is going to miss the point of your book. They are going to get the opposite of what you intended. They're going to interpret your book in a way that you don't like, and they might review it, and they might say that somewhere on the internet. And you as the author, you have to step back, because just as much as someone's gonna get it wrong, dozens of people hopefully are going to see what you were going for, and they're gonna connect with it, and they're gonna click. And that's just the natural bell curve of reviews. It's natural and normal for some people to love something like a ton, those 5-star rave reviews. It's natural for a majority, hopefully, provided you've written a pretty good book, to fall in the middle, leaning good, 3- and 4-star reviews. And then you're gonna have some people who just really don't like something, really don't connect with it. But like, especially if the thing that you don't like is in a otherwise positive review and you got a pretty high rating, I mean, you shouldn't respond anyway, but that's especially where it's kind of like, as an author, we cannot demand that everyone love and get our book in exactly the way that we hope they do, because that's just not realistic. So that's definitely been a lesson that I've learned over multiple books now and many years, and I find that it's helpful to laugh it off. So transitioning into best practices and tips, one of mine is, if you do read your reviews, have a sense of humor about it, because I find it funny, genuinely, because you will read one review that says, I didn't like this and this and this. This was poorly done. And then you will read another review, a positive review, that cites the exact things that that person didn't like as the reasons they loved that book. This even happened when I was on submission with editors, and it's also a theme in some of my reviews for Brightly Birding. People who think it's not enough like Jane Eyre, and people who think it's too much like Jane Eyre. And then of course people who fall in the middle. But those are two camps. They have opposite opinions, and they're valid for the people who have them, and you have to laugh. I think it's funny. And this is, I'm far enough away that I guess I can joke about some of the reviews for Brightly Birding. I have to say, I did laugh the few times I saw reviews that were very upset with what I did to Jane Eyre, which is totally valid, except that I have to go, I'm not taking Jane Eyre from you. I didn't do anything to it. I didn't burn it. I didn't disappear it from the earth. Jasper Ford, the Era Fairy, should read it, because if you love Jane Eyre, that's a good one. That's what I always think of. I haven't taken anything from you. You are allowed to read Jane Eyre in its purest original form and love it and enjoy it and not like my book at the same time. I haven't stolen anything from you, and I also never deemed or could ever hope to really compare to Charlotte Bronte. And so it's very funny to me, I laugh it off, when someone reads the author intention of, they're trying to replace Charlotte Bronte and Jane Eyre. Like, no? I think it's funny. So try to have a sense of humor. Sometimes you can't have a sense of humor in the moment, mind you, but it'll be funny later. But do all this privately. So this is my next best practice. I mean, first of all, you have to decide whether or not you think you can read reviews. And you might change your mind, and you are allowed to change your mind. Dip your toes in if you dare. I will tell you, usually, especially when you start reading them, it's usually positive feedback first when it comes to arcs, and then eventually like you'll get that first review that just, it didn't work for them. And sometimes they say it very neutrally, sometimes it's just a star rating and you don't even know why they didn't like it, but sometimes it's salty. And first of all, always feel your feelings privately, period. Everyone needs that friend in their life, that writer friend or author friend or family member. It helps if they've read your book / like your writing, just because they'll be able to specifically cheerlead you, like, I liked that thing or what have you. But make sure that they're a good person to vent to. Make sure they're not too pure. Make sure they're okay with colorful language if that's what you need to do. And that is your vent person. That is the person you go to piss and spit about that review that you got, because you gotta get it out of your system that one time and then move on. The key is moving on. You're allowed to be upset when you get a negative review. You are not allowed to respond to it. And it's also better if you don't let it fester. Though I guess we all have that review. And it's usually the first like super negative review we get that does stick. I do have one. I know Victoria Aveyard has one, like she'll joke about it at book launches. So like I do think that is inevitable. Even if you try not to read your reviews, somehow you're gonna see something that's gonna stick in your craw. But basically, like, have a support system, vet privately, and legitimately try to move on. Another pro tip / best practice, which I know works for some people, I will do this for my friends, have a designated friend who goes to your Goodreads page and pulls out positive reviews that they think that you should see, that are going to make your day and brighten your day. Because this, just as much as a bad review can kind of ruin your confidence, it most often than not, it triggers imposter syndrome. First, you're defensive, but then what it really is, the heart of it, is that we all think we're garbage secretly and internally, and we all kind of suspect that we're garbage writers and we're not worth the paper we're printed on, and negative reviews reinforce that, and you're gonna go through feelings about that, whether it's true or not. So it can be nice, it can brighten your day and give you confidence. I won't lie, I was having a rough day yesterday. Like I'm still half convinced that this book I'm writing right now, that I have no clue what I'm doing. That's normal. And I read a 5-star review of The Ivies that brightened my day, and it was a nice way to go into a writing session. So have that friend who finds those reviews for you. I've done that for friends where I pulled out the one where a reader like really deeply connected with their book and just said lovely, nice, affirming things about it, sent it to them, so that they wouldn't have to go looking for it themselves and risk seeing something that might be a little more sensitive. It is equally okay to be someone who can handle reviews and be someone who can't handle reviews. I personally am very happy with my medium. I can technically handle them. I just reach a point where I decide I'm good and I don't need to read them anymore, because there's only so much you can beat a dead horse. And I will say briefly to the readers watching this, you are probably gonna get your own video, but just to contextualize, I know that on the reader side you're like, they can't handle like one measly, like not glowing review. What's wrong with authors? Authors are so sensitive. I mean, yes, but it's also kind of a compounded thing. It's never one review, at least certainly what gets to me or can get to me and get to any author. I mean, sometimes for some authors it really is like all it takes is one. I personally am not that sensitive, but I respect the full spectrum of how people might feel. But it's really that it's not one, it's 5. It's 8. It's the 20th review you've seen that nitpicks that one thing that you realize you messed up, and you can't take it anymore. So really the advice is then to just step back so that you don't, lose your shirt on Twitter. So the technical best practice with reviews that you're gonna hear authors say all the time is don't read your reviews, don't go on Goodreads. But I'm gonna give you the practical tip here, because the practical realistic tip is you're probably gonna do it anyway. So just the best rule of thumb is never to respond. Just don't do it. I personally don't even think it's the best idea to respond to positive reviews. Definitely don't do it randomly. Like, don't go rolling through your Goodreads and just comment on things. Even liking positive reviews on Goodreads, I only do it if I know the person, if it's a friend of mine, because I realized after my first book that it can freak people out. I did it on a few and then I was like, they can see this. I don't want to freak people out. So I don't do that anymore. And same thing, like, I guess now we'll talk about YouTube. Because I will say it does get very murky, really, anytime you're in review spaces that are shared spaces. And this is actually where I think the conversation does get very complicated. And now authors have the power. There's a power imbalance, and that's why 99% of the time the responsibility really is on us as the authors to not respond. Because have I even said it yet? Reviews are for readers. Like, just remember that. That's very important. They're not really for you. I have a lot of feelings about that. In a space like Goodreads or even your Amazon page, that is a very obvious reader-facing space. Amazon's case, it's reader consumer-facing space. Goodreads, it's a reader-facing space where the point is by readers for readers. The point is to review and express your opinions about books for readers. Then it gets murkier on social media, in spaces where readers and authors share space. And that's why I think Instagram does get so murky, because Authorgram, I don't think that's the word for it, and Bookstagram rose at the same time. Authors and book readers were going to Instagram at around the same time, and we're still navigating those social norms. We're still navigating, you know, who do book tags belong to? Do they belong to reviewers? Do they belong to authors? I think book tags, like the hashtags, are murkier, but and at first I personally as an author was interacting on them, and then I realized, better to step back, not to follow the hashtag for my book, because that's me invading a space where I might see something I don't want to see. So my best practice for authors on Instagram is to resist the urge to follow your book hashtag or your name hashtag, even though it's our space as well. But it's safer that way, because I think it's legit that a reader should have the expectation of using a book tag and not having the author all up in their business. But tagging is a whole other can of worms. As I already stated, don't tag an author on Instagram if you don't want them to see your review and potentially have feelings about your review. I still don't think that warrants an author responding, but I do think it is a murky space where an author can, essentially the thing is taking the choice away from an author to have seeing a review be opt-in, because it should be opt-in because they're technically not for authors, they're for readers. So that's tricky. And then YouTube is also tricky. Booktube was first before AuthorTube. We have all these murky lines now of authors watching Booktube, of authors being on Booktube, AuthorTube, Booktubers publishing books, and it gets very messy, and I don't think there are any like easy answers, and I'm excited to talk about it with Mara. I know we're gonna end up talking about it. And this is where I don't know if I've navigated it perfectly. And the thing is, I have commented on 1 or 2 YouTube videos that talked about my book in a positive or neutral way, so like a haul or whatnot, like a thank you kind of thing. But I also know that some booktubers don't want that at all, and it's kind of a delicate space. It's also tough because there's some like peer stuff. So my MO as someone who watches Booktube, who is technically in Booktube, who straddles the Booktube, AuthorTube line, but is also an author with books. Well, first of all, I'll tell you overwhelmingly, I haven't been on Booktube that much. That might change in the future, but there was no real like saturation of like knowledge or interest of my earlier book titles beyond kind of my AuthorTube spaces or like direct contact I had with booktubers. So it'll like if that ever happens, it'll be a whole new challenge, because I've only had to navigate this weirdness on a very like micro level. And in many cases I've known the Booktube channels who have reviewed my book, like they're people I'm friendly with, and out of respect I don't comment on those videos even if they're mostly positive. And it's also tricky because there have been some live streams I've watched that I've really enjoyed, but knowing that they weren't for authors to watch, they were for readers, I didn't like comment in the live chat, because it's always this tricky thing for me of making people uncomfortable. So my best practice there, or advice, is I don't know all the answers. We're still navigating those spaces, but kind of err on the side of caution. Definitely never respond to anything that is in any way critical or negative, and it's probably safer not to respond at all, but I haven't been perfect with that. And like, I'll tell you that there's so many weird feelings that do come with it. There are weird feelings that come with never being in the hauls or the anticipated reads or the TBR videos of your favorite channels. That's happened. It's weird if you do get a review but they don't love your book. It's also weird being hate read or like spectacle read. That's more of an AuthorTube thing than a Booktube thing, but like so many weird feelings, navigating weird feelings. So that's one where, yeah, I'm still figuring that out, but I want to leave you with some sage words about authors and reviews that you might know in your heart of hearts, but maybe you just need to hear again or remind yourself. I have to remind myself of this, and that is no negative review, singly or even in the dozens, are the death knell for a book. In fact, you really need the full spectrum of reviews for a book because most people don't trust unanimously gushing 5-star reviews. It looks fake because usually it is, because nothing is universally loved. So you actually need those so-called negative reviews. Things are always going to feel more negative to us and we'll take it more personally than it might actually be objectively, but think about yourself as a book reader. I mean, at least I'll say what I'm like as a reader who I do look to reviews to help me purchase books because I'm a reader and a writer, and I think most of us are. I usually don't buy books based off of 5-star gushes unless it's a 5-star gush from someone I really, really trust. But how do you build trust in a reviewer? You read a spectrum of reviews from that reviewer. You need reviewers to love some things and love other things less and explain why in their reviews, because that's how you build trust. And also, just as often as it's like, oh, I'll buy something if someone I trust gives it 5 stars or 4 stars, I love 3-star reviews. They're actually my favorite reviews to read as a reader. Are they my favorite to receive as an author? No, we all want to be a 4 or 5-star review for someone, but I also know that they can be some of the most useful reviews for actually selling books and reaching the right readership. Because I like to look at what falls in the middle, because things that fall in the middle will often say, here are some good things about this book. Here are a few things that didn't make it my favorite. But often those things that didn't make it someone's favorite might be the thing that makes it a buy for you. Think about like auto buy tropes versus tropes that other people don't like. That trope that someone doesn't like that goes into that negative review, maybe it's not a 3-star, maybe it is lower, but that could be an auto buy for someone. That could make them intrigued to read the book. So no one likes mean-spirited low reviews. That's no fun. But I still, I believe, and I repeat to myself, and I will say to you, a full spectrum of reviews is good. A couple of negative reviews, some negative reviews, is natural and the way that it should be. And also just a reminder about those 3-star reviews, by the way, about the star ratings period, about review ratings period. Every reader has their own scale and every author has their own scale, and we kind of project our own ideas onto ratings. And it is dicey and can get complicated because a 3-star to you can mean, oh, they really didn't like the book. But to that reviewer, what if they almost never 5-star things? Sometimes they 4-star, but most of the things they read are a 3-star. That actually means you're a pretty good book. Same thing with a 4-star. I definitely know there are authors who really don't like 4-star reviews. And I will say we'll talk about Goodreads ratings, like the overall rating. It's frustrating that a 4-star can drag your rating down. You're like, but it's a 4-star. That is not a bad review. That's the thing, a 4-star review is not a bad review. So I think it's important as authors to kind of realign some of your ideas. You can't expect 5-star or bust, she says. Knowing that it also gets thorny on the reviewer side, which again is a whole other topic because I am someone who writes books and enjoys reviewing books, and it does get messy. We'll talk about that at a different time. So about those good star ratings, it's just a brief note both to authors and to readers. Do you know how easy it is to fall in your Goodreads rating and specifically fall below 4 stars? Very easy because of that natural spectrum of reviews. Part of the process of having your book go up on Goodreads that I will warn authors about, debut authors about, you will always start at 5 stars. And then every time you get a review that isn't 5 stars, even if it's 4 stars, which is a good book rating, that's above average, it will just steadily fall. And then you'll get your 3-star reviews and it'll fall a little more. Sometimes you'll get some 4 and 5s to offset it and it might go up a bit, but then you're gonna get your first 1 and 2-star reviews and it'll just steadily drop the closer you get to release date, because as you get more reviews, it's gonna nudge down incrementally, and it is the most maddening thing in the world. So again, kind of the practical best practices versus realistic best practices. The practical one is don't look at your Goodreads and don't think about your Goodreads rating. The realistic one is you're gonna do it anyway, and I'll just tell you that it sucks. Sometimes a book can have a low Goodreads rating because it just fell in the middle for enough people, and those middle reviews, while not bad, they bring a rating down, and you just had to get over it. So like Brightly Burning has a much higher star rating, much higher, like an incrementally higher star rating than The Stars We Steal, but I think The Stars We Steal is a better book. I'm proud of that book. I'm more proud of that book than I am of my debut, but it has a lower rating on Goodreads, and that's okay. That's something I have to deal with. The Ivies has been good so far, critical consensus, but it's nudging down, and I know it's gonna keep going down, and I have to take big girl breaths and deal with that. And my note to the reader's side is, don't judge a book by its Goodreads rating, because the vast majority of books on Goodreads are like between 3 and 4 in terms of their average, because that's literally just an average. And I've legit had people say, well, you're clearly not a very good writer, like they've said this to me here on YouTube to discount my opinions and advice, because your books are under 4 stars on Goodreads. And then it's like, most books are under 4 stars on Goodreads. That's a ridiculous measure of how good a book is. And so on the reader's side, like, yes, look at Goodreads reviews, but don't just look at the rating. You should actually look at the meat of the reviews, because also, again, remember that thing I said where it's suspicious if a book only has 5-star reviews or only has 4 and 5 stars reviews. Sometimes a book can be really highly rated on Goodreads because it has never reached the critical consensus of reviews, because not enough people are reading it. So a more like weighted lower average means it makes it more likely people are actually reading the book and having that breadth of opinion. So that's just kind of my FYI that, yeah, well, and generally I think we put too much stock in Goodreads ratings, but it's a double-edged sword. Authors care about it too much because a lot of readers care about it and make assumptions about what ratings mean, like the averages. So that's just my little like salt about Goodreads ratings and like authors. Brace yourself, it's gonna drop, and it's gonna drive you mad, and you're gonna compare yourself to other books, and it goes nowhere and it doesn't help you, but you're gonna do it anyway, so yeah. But lastly, something that I always bear in mind, and I know it because I do enjoy reviewing books, and I'm friends with many reviewers and booktubers, bookish people, as well as writers, most reviews are done in good faith. And you should take them in good faith, even when they didn't love what you wrote. And I know that's hard. There are some bad faith actors and bad faith reviews, but overwhelmingly, it's good faith action from book reviewers, because reviews are for readers and they're not doing it for you. They're not doing it to you. They want to honestly and thoughtfully express their thoughts on the books that they read to help others find books they might also enjoy reading. At least for me, that assumption of good faith makes it a little bit easier for me to step back and go, deep breaths, it wasn't for them, but that's okay. And I never respond to reviews because I'm a grown-up person. And it's just a bad idea to do it, because again, the power imbalance, like even in the best of faith, it's weird for authors to respond to reviews, especially directly. And I'm even on the fence, like I kind of referenced earlier, like, because it's been 3 years and that was very top line and very vague and representative of more like a pattern. And yet I still am kind of like, should I even address the thing that I found funny about some of my negative reviews? I don't know. But at the same time, I also recognize and acknowledge that readers might find that interesting. What do authors think about what other people say about their work to a certain degree from a safe distance? I don't know, but those are some of my updated thoughts on how I feel about reviews. More or less, they haven't changed, except that I don't want y'all to think that I spend all my time reading my reviews. I don't, because I move on from books once they are done, and mostly you just can't beat a dead horse. There's only so many times I can hear that, you know, the ending just didn't work for people. Let me know down below in the comments. What do you think? If you're an author, do you read your reviews? Are you like me? Do you have a cutoff point where you just take the temperature and then you dip out? Can you not read your reviews at all if you're a reader? How do you feel? I mean, I think that opinions really do vary. Some readers don't like it for an author to ever acknowledge that they're there, even when they're tagged, whereas others, that's actually what they're looking for. They like it that an author might like their Instagram post that they tagged them in, and so on. I really think opinions run the gamut, and I'm curious. Yeah. Give this video a thumbs up if you like it, and I will make more discussion style videos about topics in writing and being an author. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, go ahead and do that. I post new videos 2 to 3 times a week. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and happy writing.